The stars had never been kind to humanity. For 200 years, humans had been part of the Galactic Union, and for 200 years, they had been treated like dirt. The alien species called them weak. They called them primitive. They laughed at their short lives and their emotional hearts. Humanity was ranked as a Class 7 species, the lowest of the low, barely worth noticing. Captain Tai-Ho stood on the bridge of his small patrol ship, the Horizon. He looked out at the endless darkness of space and felt the familiar weight of frustration in his chest. His ship was old. His crew was small. His mission was simple: patrol the outer edges of human space where nothing ever happened. It was garbage duty, and everyone knew it. "Captain, we have received a message from Earth Command," said Lieutenant Yuna, his tactical officer. She was young, brilliant, and far too talented to be stuck on a ship like this. But that was how things worked for humans. The best they had was never good enough for the galaxy. Tai-Ho turned to face her. "What do they want?" "Councilwoman Hana is addressing the Galactic Council today. They want all ships to stand by for any updates." Tai-Ho let out a dry laugh. "Stand by for what? Another rejection? Another insult?" Yuna did not answer. She did not need to. They both knew how these things went. Councilwoman Hana was Earth's representative in the Galactic Council, the governing body of the entire galaxy. She was a strong woman with a sharp mind. But it did not matter. Every time she spoke, the aliens ignored her. Every proposal she made was dismissed. Every request for help was denied. The Galactic Union was controlled by the Valori Empire. The Valori were tall, elegant creatures with silver skin and cold eyes. They had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. They had conquered dozens of worlds. They had crushed countless species under their boots. And they looked at humans the way a person might look at an insect not far away. On the planet Velora Prime, Councilwoman Hana stood before the Great Hall of the Galactic Council. Hundreds of alien representatives sat in floating chairs, looking down at her with bored expressions. She wore her best clothes. She had prepared her speech for weeks, but she could already see it in their eyes. They did not care. "Honored members of the Council," Hana began, her voice steady and clear. "I come before you today to request additional protection for our colony worlds. Our outer settlements are vulnerable. We have reports of increased pirate activity and unauthorized military movements near our borders." A Valori representative leaned forward. His name was Lord Viren, and he was known for his cruelty and his sharp tongue. "Protection?" he said, his voice dripping with amusement. "Why would we waste resources protecting human worlds? Your species can barely protect yourselves." Laughter rippled through the hall. Hana felt her face grow hot, but she kept her composure. "We are members of this union," she said firmly. "We have the same rights as any other species. Rights?" Lord Viren smiled coldly. "You have the rights we choose to give you. Nothing more. Your species is young. Your technology is primitive. Your lives are so short that by the time you learn anything useful, you are already dying. What could you possibly offer the galaxy?" More laughter. Hana gripped the edge of her podium, her knuckles turning white. She wanted to scream. She wanted to tell them that humans had walked on their own moon when the Valori were still fighting with swords. She wanted to remind them that humans had split the atom, mapped their own genes, and dreamed of the stars long before they knew aliens existed. But she said nothing. She had learned that words meant nothing to those who refused to listen. "This session is concluded," Lord Viren announced. "The human request is denied." Hana walked out of the hall with her head held high. But inside, something was breaking. Back on the horizon, Captain Tai-Ho was reviewing the ship's systems when an alarm suddenly blared. Lieutenant Yuna's fingers flew across her console, her eyes widening. Captain, I am picking up a transmission. It is encrypted, but I managed to decode part of it. What does it say? Yuna looked up at him, her face pale. 300 Valori warships are heading toward New Bizin. Taiho felt his blood run cold. New Bizin was a human colony world. 8 million people lived there. Farmers, teachers, children. It was a peaceful place, far from any conflict. There was no reason for Valori warships to go there. Are you sure? He asked. Yes, Captain. The transmission is clear. They will arrive within 2 days. Taiho grabbed the communication device and sent an urgent message to Earth Command. He explained what they had found. He begged them to send help. He warned them that something terrible was about to happen. Hours passed. Then a reply came from Admiral Dalho, the elderly commander of Earth's small defense fleet. His voice was tired and heavy. We received your message, Captain. We have forwarded it to the Galactic Council. And Taiho demanded, what are they doing about it? There was a long pause. Then Admiral Deo spoke again. They called it human paranoia. They said the Valori have no reason to attack a farming colony. They refused to investigate. Taiho closed his eyes. Of course they did. What are our orders, sir? Hold your position. Do not engage. We do not have the ships to fight 300 warships. All we can do is watch. The communication ended. Taiho stood in silence, his hands shaking with anger. Lieutenant Yuna approached him slowly. Captain, what do we do? He did not answer. He walked to the observation window and stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there, 300 Valori warships were moving toward a world full of innocent people. And the galaxy did not care. 2 days later, Captain Taiho watched his scanner as the Valori fleet entered New Bizin's orbit. 300 ships. Enough firepower to burn a planet to ashes. And against them, nothing. No defense. No help. No hope. He thought about the families down there. The children playing in the fields. The old people drinking tea on their porches. The young couples dreaming of the future. They had no idea what was coming. Taiho clenched his fists and whispered to himself, they have no idea what they are about to start. He did not know it yet, but he was right. The Valori thought they were about to crush another weak species. They thought humanity would bow and break like all the others. They were wrong. They were so terribly wrong. The galaxy was about to learn a lesson it would never forget. Humanity did not break. Humanity burned. And when pushed too far, humanity pushed back with the fury of 1,000 suns. But that was still to come. For now, there was only silence and the cold light of distant stars. The morning sun rose over New Bizin like any other day. Children walked to school. Farmers worked in the fields. Old women sold vegetables in the market. It was a simple world, a peaceful world. The people here had left Earth generations ago to build a quiet life among the stars. They wanted nothing from the galaxy except to be left alone. Governor Minho stood in his office, looking out at the city below. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had been a soldier once, long ago. He had fought in wars that most people had forgotten. But those days were behind him. Now he was just a governor of a farming colony, dealing with crop reports and water systems. His assistant rushed into the room, her face white with fear. Governor, there are ships in orbit. Valori warships. Hundreds of them. Minho felt his heart stop. What do they want? Before she could answer, a transmission came through. A cold, cruel voice filled the room. It was High Commander Torak, one of the most feared military leaders in the Valori Empire. People of New Bizin, Torak said, your planet has been claimed by the Valori Empire. You have 24 hours to evacuate. Leave everything behind. Take only what you can carry. Any resistance will be punished. Minho grabbed the communication device. This is Governor Minho. Our colony is protected under Galactic Union law. You have no right to take our world. Torek laughed. It was an ugly, cruel sound. Rights? You are humans. You have no rights. Your planet sits on valuable minerals that belong to the Empire. Leave, or we will remove you ourselves. I will not abandon my people, Minho said firmly. I will not abandon our homes. We built this world with our own hands. You cannot take it from us. There was a pause. Then Torek spoke again, his voice like ice. Very well. You have chosen. The transmission ended. Minho turned to his assistant. Contact Earth. Tell them what is happening. And prepare the shelters. Get as many people underground as possible. But there was not enough time. There was never enough time. Across the city, Dr. Sujin was working in the hospital. She was a small woman with kind eyes and steady hands. She had spent her whole life helping people, healing wounds, and saving lives. She was treating a young boy with a broken arm when the first explosion hit. The ground shook. The windows shattered. Screams filled the air. Sujin grabbed the boy and pulled him under a table as the ceiling cracked above them. What is happening? The boy cried. Sujin held him tight. It will be okay. Stay with me. It will be okay. But it was not okay. Outside, fire rained from the sky. Valori warships were bombing the cities. Buildings collapsed. Streets turned to rubble. People ran in every direction, screaming, crying, searching for their families. In the military base outside the capital, young Commander G. O was trying to reach his fighter ship. He was only 23 years old, one of the best pilots on the planet. But there was nothing he could do against 300 warships. The base was already burning. His friends were already dead. He climbed into his damaged shuttle and flew up through the chaos. Explosions surrounded him. Debris flew past his window. He saw the Valori ships above, dark and massive, blocking out the stars. And he saw what they were doing to his world. 3 cities were gone. Just gone. Where millions of people had lived and loved and dreamed, there was now only fire and smoke and death. 2 million people dead in minutes. Children who never got to grow up. Parents who never got to say goodbye. Lives erased like they meant nothing. Chiho activated his recording device. Tears streamed down his face as he captured everything. The burning cities. The falling bombs. The silent screams of a dying world. Someone needed to see this. Someone needed to know what happened here. Back on the surface, Dr. Sujin was pulling survivors from the rubble. Her hospital was half destroyed, but she refused to stop. Her hands were bleeding. Her body was exhausted. But every time she saved someone, she kept going. One more. Just one more. Governor Minho stood in the ruins of the Capitol building. His city was burning around him. His people were dying. He could hear the Valori ships above, preparing for another attack. He knew he would not survive this day. He activated the emergency broadcast, his last message to Earth. This is Governor Minho of New Bizan, he said, his voice cracking. The Valori have attacked us without warning. They are killing our people. Our cities are burning. We have no way to fight back. I do not know how much longer we have. He paused, fighting back tears. Remember us. Please remember us. Make them remember us. The transmission ended. Moments later, a bomb struck the building. Governor Minho was gone. Commander Chiho escaped the planet in his damaged shuttle. He was one of the few who made it out. He carried with him the recordings of everything that had happened. the proof of what the Valerie had done. Far away on Earth, Admiral Deo stood in the command center with his officers. They watched the footage in silence. 2 million dead, an entire colony destroyed, children burned in their beds, families torn apart. Admiral Deo was an old man. He had seen many things in his long life. He had fought in wars. He had buried friends. He had always kept his calm. But as he watched the footage from New Bizan, tears streamed down his face. His hands shook. His heart broke. The room was silent. No one knew what to say. What could anyone say? On Velora Prime, Councilwoman Hana stood before the Galactic Council once again. Her voice was steady, but her eyes burned with cold fury. 2 million of our people are dead, she said. Our colony has been destroyed. We demand justice. We demand that the Council take action against the Velori Empire. Lord Varen waved his hand dismissively. This is an internal dispute. The Velori Empire had legal claim to those resources. The humans chose to resist. The consequences are their own. They were civilians. Hana shouted. Children. They did nothing wrong. They were in the way, Varen replied coldly. That is all. The Council murmured in agreement. No one spoke in humanity's defense. No one offered help. No one cared. Hana looked around the great hall at all the alien faces. She saw their indifference. She saw their contempt. She saw that humanity was truly alone in this galaxy. Slowly, she reached up and removed her council badge. She held it in her hand for a moment, then dropped it on the floor. Then we will handle it ourselves, she said quietly. She turned and walked out of the hall. The aliens watched her go with amused smiles. They thought it was a joke. They thought humans were making empty threats. They had no idea what was coming. On Earth, deep beneath the mountains, a bunker that had been sealed for 400 years was finally opened. Lights flickered on in dusty hallways. Machines that had been sleeping for centuries began to wake up. A general stood at the entrance, looking at the rows of pods inside. 10,000 soldiers, the best humanity had ever produced. Frozen in time for exactly this moment, he turned to his officers and spoke 3 words that would change the galaxy forever. Wake the sleepers. Humanity was done being quiet. Humanity was done being weak. The galaxy wanted monsters? They would get monsters. And they would learn why humans should never, ever be pushed too far. The galaxy thought it knew humanity. The galaxy was wrong. For 200 years, humans had played the part of the weak species. They had bowed their heads. They had accepted insults. They had pretended to be harmless. But all along, in the shadows, they had been preparing for this day. General Sunho walked through the secret military complex hidden deep beneath the mountains of Earth. His boots echoed on metal floors that had not felt footsteps in decades. Around him, soldiers and engineers rushed to activate systems that the galaxy did not know existed. How long until the fleet is ready? He asked. 6 hours, replied Engineer Yunji, a small woman with glasses and oil-stained hands. She had spent her entire life building weapons in secret. Weapons the galaxy had never seen. The Titans are waking up. The ghost ships are already running silent. We will be ready. General Sunho nodded. He had waited his whole career for this moment. Every generation of human leaders had passed down the same secret, the same warning. One day, the galaxy would push too far. And when that day came, humanity would be ready docked in another part of the complex. The sleepers were waking up. 10,000 soldiers, the greatest warriors humanity had ever produced, preserved in frozen sleep for centuries. They had fought in humanity's bloodiest wars. They had survived things that would break ordinary people. And they had volunteered to sleep forever, waiting for the day their species needed them most. Captain Taiho stood watching as the pods opened one by one. Soldiers stepped out, their eyes sharp and clear despite their long sleep. They stretched their muscles, checked their bodies, and looked around at the world they had returned to. One of them, a woman with short hair and a scar across her cheek, approached Tayo. Her name was Sergeant Bora, and according to the files, she had killed more enemies in single combat than any soldier in human history. "How long were we asleep?" she asked. 400 years, Tayo replied. Ora nodded slowly. "And why were we awakened?" "Aliens killed 2 million of our people. Women, children, civilians." Tayo's voice was steady, but his eyes burned with anger. "They thought we were weak. They thought we would do nothing." A cold smile spread across Bora's face. "Then they made a mistake. Across the solar system, humanity's secret was coming to light. In the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, massive rocks began to split open. They were not asteroids at all. They were ships. Warships the size of mountains, hidden in plain sight for 2 centuries. Project Titan, the greatest weapons humanity had ever built. On Luna Base, stealth ships activated their ghost protocol systems and vanished from all sensors. One moment they were there, the next they were invisible. No technology in the galaxy could detect them. On Mars, factories that had been dormant for generations roared back to life. Weapons rolled off assembly lines. Ammunition filled cargo holds. Armor that could adapt and evolve in the middle of battle was loaded onto ships. And on Earth, Admiral Deho stood before a camera, preparing to address the galaxy. He was an old man, tired and gray, but his eyes held a fire that had not burned so bright in decades. Councilwoman Hannah stood beside him. She had returned from the Galactic Council with nothing but contempt for the aliens who had abandoned humanity. Now she would help deliver a message the galaxy would never forget. "Are you ready?" she asked. Admiral Deho straightened his uniform and faced the camera. "I have been ready my whole life." The broadcast went out to every corner of the galaxy. Every species, every world, every ship received the signal. It interrupted their programs, their communications, their daily lives. And it showed them Admiral Deho's face. "People of the galaxy," he began, his voice calm but firm. "For 200 years, you have called humanity weak. You have called us primitive. You have laughed at our short lives and dismissed our existence. We accepted your insults. We played the role you expected. We waited." He paused, letting his words sink in. 2 days ago, the Velori Empire murdered 2 million of our people. They burned our cities. They killed our children. And when we asked for justice, the Galactic Council turned away. They said our lives did not matter. Admiral Deho's eyes hardened. They were wrong. Behind him, the screen changed to show humanity's hidden fleet. 500 warships, massive and terrifying, emerging from asteroids and shadows. The Titans, the Ghosts, the weapons that had waited in darkness for this moment. Gasps echoed across the galaxy. This was impossible. Humans were primitive. Humans were weak. Humans could not have built this. But they had. Oh, they had. "You forgot something about humanity," Admiral Deho continued. "You saw our short lives as weakness. But you were wrong. Short lives burn brighter. We love harder. We fight fiercer. And we never forget." His voice grew cold. "To the Velori Empire, you killed 2 million of our children. We are coming. Not for conquest. Not for territory. Not for revenge. We are coming for justice. You took innocent lives. Now you will answer for them." He leaned closer to the camera. "Run if you want. It will not help." The broadcast ended. Silence fell across the galaxy. On 1000 W. Orals Aliens stared at their screens in shock. This could not be real. This had to be a trick. But it was real. Very, very real. On the flagship Vengeance, the largest ship in the human fleet, Captain Tai-Ho took his place on the bridge. Lieutenant Yuna stood beside him, her face calm and focused. Behind them, Commander Jiho sat in his pilot seat. He had survived New Bizen. He had watched his world burn. Now he would deliver humanity's answer. Dr. Sujin walked through the medical bay, checking supplies and preparing for the wounded that would come. She had escaped New Bizen with nothing but the clothes on her back. She had lost friends, patients, people she loved. But she was still a healer. Even in war, she would save lives. Engineer Yunji sat in her control room, monitoring the fleet's systems. Her adaptive armor was working perfectly. Her stealth technology was undetectable. Her weapons were ready. She had built all of this with her own hands. Now she would watch it work. And Sergeant Bora led the sleepers onto their transport ships. 10,000 warriors, ready to fight and die for their species. They had slept through centuries of peace. Now they would wake for war. Admiral Deho gave the final order. All ships, prepare for jump. We are going to Valori space. The fleet activated their engines. Space twisted and bent around them. And then, in a flash of light, 500 human warships vanished into hyperspace. The galaxy watched in stunned silence. This was not supposed to happen. Humans were supposed to cry and beg and die quietly. They were not supposed to fight back. They were not supposed to be strong. On Velora Prime, High Commander Torak received the news with a sneer. "Let them come," he said. "They are still just humans. We will crush them like we crush everything else." But deep in his heart, something cold began to grow. A feeling he had never experienced before. A feeling that whispered maybe, just maybe, he had made a terrible mistake. The humans were coming. And they were bringing 200 years of silence, 200 years of patience, and 2 million reasons for fury. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when humanity stopped pretending to be weak. The Valori called it the Ghost War. One day their military bases were there. The next day they were gone. Human ships appeared from nowhere. They struck fast and hard, destroying weapons, communications, and defense systems. Then they vanished before the Valori could even fire a shot. No sensor could detect them. No weapon could target them. It was like fighting shadows. In the first week, 3 Valori fleets were completely destroyed. 15,000 ships, reduced to floating metal in silence. The Valori commanders sent panicked messages to their homeworld. The enemy was everywhere. The enemy was nowhere. The enemy was unstoppable. Captain Tai-Ho stood on the bridge of the Vengeance, watching the latest battle unfold on the display screens. Another Valori base was burning. Another enemy fleet was scattered and broken. His crew moved with cold efficiency, doing their jobs without celebration. This was not a game. This was justice. "Captain," Lieutenant Yuna reported, "we have located High Commander Torak. He is on a command. Stationed in the Varan system." Tai-Ho's jaw tightened. Torak, the man who had ordered the bombing of New Bizen, the man who had killed 2 million innocent people without hesitation. Finding him was not just a military goal. It was personal. "Prepare a strike team," Tai-Ho ordered. "Lieutenant, you will lead the mission." Yuna nodded. Her face showed no emotion, but Tai-Ho knew her well enough to see the fire in her eyes. She wanted this. They all wanted this. The strike team moved in silence. Ghost ships carried them through Valori defenses without triggering a single alarm. Sergeant Bora led the sleepers through the station's corridors, taking down guards with quiet efficiency. They were death-walking, and nothing could stop them. High Commander Torak was in his chambers when the door exploded inward. He reached for his weapon, but Yuna was faster. She knocked it from his hand and pinned him to the floor. "High Commander Torek," she said calmly, "you are under arrest for crimes against humanity. You will face trial for the murder of 2 million civilians." Torek spat at her. "You are insects. The Empire will crush you." "You cannot." Bora stepped forward and silenced him with a single punch. "He talks too much." They dragged him back to the ship in chains. The galaxy's most feared commander, captured by the species he had called primitive. The irony was not lost on anyone. With Torok captured, the human fleet moved to Phase 2 of their plan, the siege of Velora Prime, the homeworld of the Velori Empire. No enemy had touched that world in 10,000 years. Now 500 human warships surrounded it, their weapons aimed at the heart of an empire. Panic swept through the Velori population. This was impossible. This was unthinkable. Their mighty fleets had been shattered. Their greatest commander had been captured. And now the enemy sat in their sky, waiting. Admiral Deo sent a message to the Velori Emperor. His terms were simple. Torek would face trial for his crimes. The Velori would pay reparations to new Bizan survivors. The Empire would officially apologize for the massacre. If these terms were accepted, no more blood needed to be shed. The Emperor's response came within hours. It was a single word: never. Admiral Deo closed his eyes and sighed. He had hoped it would not come to this. But humans had learned long ago that hope without action was meaningless. "All ships," he ordered, "begin the assault." The battle for Velora Prime was the largest space battle in galactic history. The Velori threw everything they had at the human fleet. Thousands of ships, millions of soldiers, weapons that had conquered dozens of worlds. They fought with the desperation of a cornered animal, but it was not enough. Commander Jiho flew through the chaos like a dancer through fire. His fingers moved across the controls with impossible speed. Enemy ships exploded around him. Missiles missed him by inches. He had survived New Bizon. He had watched his world die. Now he was returning that pain 1,000-fold. "Shield generator in sight," he reported over the communication system. "Making my approach." "That is a suicide run," someone warned. "You will not survive." Jiho smiled grimly. "Watch me." He pushed his ship to maximum speed and dove straight toward the Velori flagship. Weapons fire filled the space around him. His ship shook and groaned. Warning alarms screamed in his ears. But he did not stop. He could not stop Dot at the last moment. He fired everything he had. His missiles slammed into the shield generator, creating a massive explosion that ripped through the flagship's defenses. His ship spun away, damaged but still flying. "Shields down," Jiho reported, breathing hard. "Target is open." The human fleet moved in. Without shields, the Velori flagship was vulnerable. Precise strikes disabled its weapons, its engines, its communications. It hung in space, helpless and broken. On the Vengeance, Dr. Sujin worked in the medical bay without rest. Wounded soldiers came in waves, some burned, some bleeding, some barely alive. She saved everyone she could. She held the hands of those she could not save. She cried when no one was watching. But she never stopped. She could not stop. Not until it was over. Engineer Yunji sat in her control room, her fingers flying across keyboards. Every time the Velori adapted their tactics, she adapted faster. When they found a weakness in the human armor, she fixed it in real time. When they tried new weapons, she neutralized them within minutes. She was fighting a war with code and calculations, and she was winning. Admiral Deo watched the battle unfold from his command chair. His heart ached at every ship lost, every life sacrificed. But he also saw what they were achieving. The mightiest empire in the galaxy was falling. Not to conquerors, not to monsters, but to a species they had dismissed as worthless. "Admiral," an officer reported, "the Valori Emperor is requesting communication." "Put him through." The Emperor's face appeared on screen. He looked older than his pictures, tired and afraid. The arrogance was gone from his eyes. "You have made your point," he said, his voice strained. "What do you want?" "I told you what I want," Admiral Deho replied calmly. Torek faces trial. Reparations for New Bizin. An official apology. And one more thing. The Valori Empire will treat all species as equals from now on. No more conquering. No more enslaving. No more murder. The Emperor hesitated. "Those terms are non-negotiable." Admiral Deho leaned forward. "You killed our children. You laughed while they burned. Now you will pay the price. Accept my terms, or we will continue until there is nothing left of your empire but memories." The Emperor looked at his burning fleets, his shattered defenses, his broken pride. He had no choice. "We accept." Admiral Deho nodded. "Wise decision?" He turned to his officers. "Ceasefire. All ships stand down." The guns fell silent. The battle was over. Far away, the Galactic Council watched in disbelief. Lord Viren, who had mocked humanity so many times, sat frozen in his chair. The species he had called insects had brought the greatest empire in the galaxy to its knees. Councilwoman Hana walked into the council chamber and stood where she had stood so many times before. But now, everything was different. Now they feared her. "You refused to help us," she said quietly. "You watched our people die and called it an internal dispute. You dismissed our cries for justice." She looked around at the silent, terrified faces. "Remember this moment. Remember what happens when you push humanity too far. We do not forget. We do not forgive. And we do not lose." She turned and walked away. No one dared to speak. On the transport ship heading to trial, High Commander Torak sat in his cell, staring at the wall. He had killed 2 million people and felt nothing. Now he would face judgment, and for the first time in his life, he felt fear. The door opened. A young woman walked in. Her name was Nari, and she was 16 years old. She was Governor Minho's daughter, one of the few survivors of New Bizan. She looked at Torak with steady eyes. "You killed my father," she said. "You killed my mother. You destroyed my world." She stepped closer. "Look at me. Remember my face. Because I am the last thing you will see as a free man." Torak looked away. He could not meet her eyes. Nari turned and left. The door closed behind her with a heavy click. Justice was coming. And it would not be gentle. 1 year had passed since the war. The galaxy was not the same. Nothing was the same. High Commander Torak stood in the trial chamber, surrounded by judges from a dozen species. For months, they had heard testimony. Survivors of New Bizin told their stories. Recordings showed the bombs falling. Evidence proved that Torak had ordered the attack, knowing full well that millions of civilians would die. There was no defense. There could be no defense. The head judge, an elderly human woman with silver hair, read the verdict. "High Commander Torak, you have been found guilty of genocide, crimes against humanity, and the murder of 2 million innocent lives. You are sentenced to spend the rest of your existence in solitary confinement on Prison Moon 7. You will never see the stars again. You will never hear another voice. You will live with what you have done until the day you die." Torak said nothing. His face was empty. The monster who had laughed while children burned now looked like a hollow shell, broken and defeated. Guards led him away. He did not resist. There was nothing left to resist with in the observation gallery, Nari watched him go. She was 17 now, 1 year older, 1 year stronger. She did not feel joy at his punishment. She did not feel peace. But she felt something close to closure. Her parents could rest now. Their murderer had faced justice. Admiral Deho stood beside her. He had retired from the military after the war. His work was done. Now he spent his time helping rebuild what had been destroyed. "How do you feel?" he asked gently. Nar. I thought about the question for a long time. "Empty," she finally said, "but also free. I spent a year thinking about revenge. Now I can think about living instead." Deho nodded. "That is the healthiest thing I have heard in a long time." Far across the galaxy, the Velori Empire was changing. The old emperor had been forced to step down, replaced by a council of reformers who wanted peace instead of conquest. They paid the reparations they had promised. They sent aid to new Byzant survivors. They began the slow, difficult process of becoming something other than monsters. Some Velori resisted. They called it weakness, surrender, shame. But most were tired. They had ruled through fear for 10,000 years. And what had it brought them? A war they could not win against an enemy they had underestimated. Maybe it was time to try something different. On Earth, Councilwoman Hana walked into the Galactic Council chamber. But this time, she did not walk as a humble representative of a weak species. She walked as the new president of the council, elected by a unanimous vote of every species in the Union. The sane aliens who had mocked her, ignored her, dismissed her, now stood and bowed as she passed. She did not smile. She did not gloat. She simply took her seat at the head of the chamber and began to lead. "The first order of business," she announced, "is a new law. From this day forward, any species that attacks civilian populations will face immediate action from the entire Union. No more internal disputes. No more looking away. If you kill innocents, you will answer for it." The vote was unanimous. No one dared object. Captain Tai-Ho, now Admiral Tai-Ho, commanded the new peacekeeping fleet. His ships patrolled the borders of 100 worlds, keeping the peace that had been won with so much blood. Lieutenant Yuna served as head of galactic intelligence, using her brilliant mind to prevent wars before they started. They worked together still, as they always had, protecting the weak and punishing the cruel. Commander Jiho returned to New Bizan. He could not stay in the military after what he had seen, what he had done. The rage that had driven him through the war had burned out, leaving only exhaustion and grief. But slowly he found a new purpose. He became a teacher at the Flight Academy, training young pilots for the new era. He told them about the war, about the friends he had lost, about the price of violence. He taught them to be strong, but also kind, to fight only when necessary, to protect the innocent above all else. Dr. Sujin founded the first interspecies medical academy. Doctors and healers from across the galaxy came to learn from her. She taught them that life was precious, no matter what species it belonged to. She had seen too much death. Now she would dedicate her remaining years to creating life and hope. Engineer Yunji shared her technology with any species that signed the new peace treaties. Her adaptive armor, her stealth systems, her brilliant inventions became tools for defense instead of conquest. She received offers from the richest worlds in the galaxy, but she chose to stay on Earth, working in her quiet lab, building things that would protect rather than destroy. Sergeant Bora and the sleepers returned to their pods. They had done what they were awakened to do. Now they would sleep again, waiting for the next time humanity needed them. Bora hoped that time would never come. But she also knew that if it did, they would be ready. General Sono retired to a small house by the ocean. He spent his days fishing and reading, enjoying the peace he had spent his whole life preparing for. Sometimes old soldiers visited him, and they talked about the war over cups of tea. But mostly, he was alone with his thoughts and the sound of waves. And on New Bazan, life was returning. The bombed cities had been rebuilt. New buildings rose where the old ones had fallen. Children played in parks built on ground that had once been ash. Families laughed and loved and dreamed of the future. A memorial stood in the center of the capital. It was a simple wall of black stone, carved with 2 million names. Every person who had died in the attack was remembered here. Every morning, people came to lay flowers and say prayers. Every night, lights shone on the wall, keeping the memories alive. Nari visited her parents' names every week. She traced the letters with her fingers, remembering their faces, their voices, their love. She told them about her life, about her studies, about the boy she was starting to like, about the future she was building from the ruins of the past. One day, as she stood before the wall, she felt a small tug at her sleeve. She looked down to see an alien child, a young Valori with wide silver eyes. "Are humans really that scary?" the child asked. Nari looked at the little alien. A year ago, she would have felt only hatred for anything Valori. But that hate had faded, replaced by something more complicated. The child was innocent. The child had done nothing wrong. Hating the young for the sins of the old only created more pain. She knelt down to the child's level and smiled softly. "Only to those who deserve it," she said. "To everyone else, we are just people. We love, we laugh, we cry. We are not so different from you." The child seemed to think about this. Then it smiled back. "I want to be friends with humans." Nari felt something warm spread through her chest. "I think we would like that." Behind them, ships from 100 species landed at the spaceport. They brought aid, trade, friendship. The galaxy that had once ignored humanity now rushed to embrace it. Not out of fear, but out of respect. Humanity had proven itself not just powerful, but principled. They could have destroyed the Valori Empire completely. They could have taken revenge beyond measure. Instead, they had shown mercy. They had demanded justice, not genocide. They had chosen to build rather than destroy. That was what the galaxy remembered. That was what the galaxy learned. In her office on Earth, President Hana prepared for a speech to the entire galaxy. She had thought about what to say for days, trying to find the right words. Now, as the cameras activated and billions watched, she finally knew. "You asked us why we fight so hard," she began, her voice calm and steady. "Why we burn so bright. The answer is simple. We are mortal. We know our time is short. So we fill every moment with love, with passion, with purpose. We build families. We remember our dead. We tell stories of heroes." She paused, looking into the camera as if seeing every being in the galaxy. "You have lived for millennia, and yet you learn nothing about what makes life precious. We live for decades, and we understand everything. Push us, and we push back. Hurt our children, and we become nightmares. But show us kindness, and we will move stars for you." Her voice softened. "That is humanity. Remember it." The broadcast ended. Across the galaxy, billions sat in silence, thinking about what they had heard. Abo. At the species they had underestimated. About the lesson they had learned in fire and blood. Humanity was small. Humanity was mortal. Humanity lived brief lives in a vast, cold universe. But humanity was not weak. Humanity was never weak, and the galaxy would never forget. On New Bizan, as the sun set over the rebuilt cities, Nari stood before the memorial one last time. The names of the dead glowed softly in the fading light. She placed her hand on the stone and whispered a promise. "We will make you proud. We will build a better world." And we will never, ever let this happen again. The stars came out above her, bright and countless. Somewhere among them, the future was waiting, a future where humanity stood tall, a future earned through sacrifice and strength, a future that would never have existed if, one terrible day, the galaxy had not pushed humanity too far. And now the galaxy knew the truth. Humanity was not to be feared, but it was to be respected, always.